I'm Vicky McClure. I've spent years playing police officers on screen. My husband Johnny Owen is a historian and filmmaker. We share a passion for finding out the truth.
Together, we're going on a journey back in time to explore murder cases that have changed modern Britain.
Oh God. He's basically saying, I'll do time for these people, but when I come out, I'm going to kill them. Whether it's unsolved crimes...
Councillor Cochrane was the victim. He wasn't the perpetrator of any crime.
Miscarriages of justice.
The last words he said just before he was executed was, Christie done it.
Wow.
Gosh. Or milestone cases that have changed the law.
The government agreed to not disclose it to the public.
Wow.
We'll examine what really happened and how the legacy of these crimes continues to be felt today.
Well, here we are in the beautiful capital of Scotland, Edinburgh. I love the city, the Athens of the North, as they call it.
Yeah.
That's because it was a world leader in the 19th century, a bit like Athens was in the ancient world, of philosophy, medicine. And that ties in nicely with a famous story about the city, a macabre story, Burke and Hare.
So who are Burke and Hare?
All I know is that they were the body snatchers, and they provided bodies for doctors to look at.
So they're snatching bodies?
Yes.
This morning when I left the hotel, I was talking to the concierge and he says, what are you both filming here? And I said, we're here doing Burke and Hare. And he went, ooh.
Did he?
Yeah. Yeah.
So should we find out more?
Let's do that. Everyone's heard of Burke and Hare, but what's the real story? We want to sort out the facts from the fiction. Who were Burke and Hare? Why were they snatching bodies? And who for?
In the early 1800s, Edinburgh was famously a city of two halves, the rich and the very poor, the haves and the have-nots. The average life expectancy was only about 35 years old, so it definitely has a tough, dark side. My old mate Irving Welsh has written about social division in Edinburgh many times, most famously in Trainspotting.
Let's go.
He once wrote a screenplay based on the story of Burke and Hare.
Well,
Good to see you, mate. You okay? Yeah. We're in the lovely city, a native city of Edinburgh, and we are trying to find out the story of
Burke and Hare.
Burke and Hare, yeah. They were often kind of described as body snatchers, but they weren't. They were mass murderers. They would get people drunk, kill them, and then sell the bodies for medical research.
Oh, okay. So I always thought they were the body snatchers. That's how they're sort of known in popular culture. So they never actually snatched any bodies.
They never snatched any bodies, no. They kind of prepared the fresh kill. If you're working class in Edinburgh, try and get money at the bourgeoisie, it's not an easy task, like, you know, so I don't think it would be particularly easy back then. Yeah, it's quite a Edinburgh story of the very wealthy and privileged kind of benefiting from the marginalised and the excluded.
It's fascinating because, you know, all of these stories does all tend to fall back into class most of the time.
Yeah, when you think back to what Edinburgh was like then, before they built the new town, the old town here, everybody lived together. So you had quite wealthy professions on the top floors, and then you had kind of tradesmen in the middle, and then you had the labourers on the bottom floor of these big tenements. So everybody lived together, and they'd throw all the feces and urine out. So it was quite a tough life for people, particularly on the bottom floors.
Gosh. So the higher social classes literally lived on top of the working class.
It's been ingrained in the DNA of the city, the stories of the city for years and years. Robert Louis Stevenson's Jekyll and Hyde, very much influenced by it.
Burke and Hare, I mean, how do you feel they influenced your work?
My book, Dead Men's Trousers, was very much about this body parts thing, which is a modern version of the, you know, of the cadaver, the selling of body parts. So these stories and these characters are pretty much ingrained in the literary culture of the town.
Yeah.
There's a lot to delve into that.
Yes, I think so.
So dark.
So Burke and Hare weren't actually body snatchers dragging bodies out of graveyards. They were serial murderers who sold the corpses of their so-called fresh kills for medical research. So how and why did they come to be so mythologized and their crimes misrepresented?
I think part of the reason lies in the dark nature of their crimes, which made them Scotland's first serial killer celebrities.
So this is the world famous Royal Mile. This goes right up to the castle. Here we go. This is where Burke was hung. The very spot, and can you imagine, right in the middle of the city, on the Royal Mile, 1 in 4 people in Edinburgh here.
Up to 30,000 people hanging out the windows.
1 in 4?
1 in 4, a quarter of the population,
Wow.
had come to see him being hung, like public spectacle.
It says a lot about how the city felt about him and
Yeah.
that, that story and everything that happened. So we know William Burke came to a sticky end. But how did he and William Hare get started?
So this is the very famous Grassmarket area. This is where Burke and Hare lived, socialised, drank, and also the people who were their victims, unfortunately, also.
And now we're going to meet Rob, who's
Yes.
an expert tour guide who
That's
has
right.
studied Burke and Hare.
Yes.
I'm Vicky, nice to
Rob
meet
Shepherd,
you.
good to meet you.
Johnny, lovely to meet
Johnny,
you. pal.
nice
You
to meet
okay?
you, nice to
Yeah.
meet you.
We're hoping that you'll be able to give us lots of information on Burke and Hare.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Burke and Hare murdered 16 people in a 10-month period.
That's shocking. There's so many victims in such a short time.
Let's talk about William Burke.
Yeah.
He was born in Ireland in 1792,
Right.
but there was not much money kicking around then, so he decided to leave, come to Edinburgh, and he met a lady by the name of Nellie McDougall, and they actually lived as man and wife for about 10 years, and they eventually came into Edinburgh. They met Margaret Laird, married to a chap called William Hare.
William Hare, there he is. Right, okay.
Wow, looking quite handsome. Does, yeah.
Not my time.
Well, November 1827 was the very first time Burke and Hare met. By the time the final murder took place, they'd only known each other for a year.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really intrigued by the 2 women who were involved in this as well. Did they know about it?
Margaret
Yeah.
Hare, first of all, she was actually getting paid £1 for the use of her boarding house for the murders.
Oh, right,
Wow.
okay.
So Burke and Hare split the money that we get, which would range between £7 during the summer and £10 during the winter. Hare would take the lion's share of that, Burke would get some, and Margaret got £1 out of Burke's share. So she knew exactly what was going on.
Oh,
Wow.
Nellie McDougall was infatuated with Burke, she loved him, and Burke just told her the story that the bodies were found in lodging houses. Whether she believed it and just decided to maybe turn a blind eye instead.
Hare taking most of the money,
Yeah.
his wife being more involved, seems to be, I would, more sort of manipulative of the 2, maybe.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hare was a despicable character. Burke, however, was quite likeable.
Yes.
I mean, if you met Burke in a pub, you'd probably have a dram with him,
Yeah.
I think that was key. Because he managed to lure people back because he trusted him.
Right.
They came down here to the Grassmarket and they would visited bars like the White Hart Inn. The idea was to take them back to their lodging house where it was private and then do the
So
deed
the
there.
murders took place in their houses?
Absolutely.
I'd like to know more about Margaret Hare's notorious lodging house and how the murders began in late 1827.
Right, so we are now at the site of where William Hare and Margaret Hare's lodging house was. Tanner's Close came from the front street down and we'd finish round about here. In November, there was a knock on Burke's door. It was here, and he said that old Donald had died. He's my lodger. He's died for before £4 in rent. But Hare and Burke had both heard that if you could sell a body to the anatomy school, you could actually get quite a bit of cash for it. So that was the plan.
So it all started with a dead body, not a murder.
Yes, exactly. So the next move is to go to Edinburgh University and look for Professor Alexander Munro, who was the head of anatomy there.
Had Alexander Munro been in that day, the story of Burke and Hare might have turned out very differently. As it was, in Munro's absence, Burke and Hare were directed to the house of his altogether more flamboyant and ambitious colleague, anatomist Dr. Robert Knox.
So they went across to Surgeon Square, knocked on the door at number 10, and another medical student opened the door. He says, well, bring the body back here in the cover of darkness. Knox was called for. He did a quick examination and told the student to give him £7 and 10 shillings. And Knox said to them, if you get any more subjects, we'd be very interested.
Wow.
So that was really the catalyst for them to think, how can we take advantage of the situation?
Must have been intoxicating for them, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. In money nowadays, we're talking hundreds of pounds.
Wow, okay.
They spent all the money they'd earned on whiskey mostly.
Wow.
People died because they got pissed.
Exactly.
Hundreds of pounds.
In terms of the murders themselves, was there a trend in how they were murdering people?
Yes, okay, so there was a trend actually. Abigail Simpson was murdered using this method. It's now come known as burking. It's in the dictionary.
Wow.
What is it? What?
So burking is named after William Burke, but in actual fact, how it took place was Hare would basically clamp his hand on the chin to keep it closed, and his other hand on the nose.
Right.
I will demonstrate with you, Vicky, but I'm not going to. So, you know, Burke would then lie across the chest or sit astride the chest. Either way, really quite an ingenious form of murder because it left no trace on the body.
Suffocation would mean the preserving of the body.
That's exactly what
Anatomists
to want, almost like a pure body with no scratches,
Exactly.
marks. It's insane, isn't it? I was shocked by a few things, how short the period of time was,
Yeah.
and serial killing people for money. You know,
And
the
spending
sadistic.
it on booze.
Yeah, not for the sadistic enjoyment as we imagine a modern day serial killer.
And their wives were in on it.
Okay, so we know quite a lot about Burke and Hare now. I think the next thing is to find out about people like Dr. Knox.
Yeah. How much did Knox know about the murders? Bearing in mind, he was a celebrated anatomist of the day and the fellow of the prestigious Royal Society. Were Burke and Hare killing to order? (1828) Edinburgh. William Burke and William Hare are murdering people and selling their cadavers to Dr. Robert Knox for dissection at his private anatomy school.
The poor being killed so their bodies could be dissected and examined by medical students. It's shocking. We need to know more about how and why this was able to happen.
So I've managed to track down a lady called Kat Irving.
Okay.
And she's an expert in science, history, everything that we want to find out in that area.
Oh, amazing.
She's the woman in the know. Hi.
Hello.
Lovely to meet you. I'm Vicky.
I'm Kat.
Nice to
I'm
meet you.
Johnny. Nice to meet you. You okay?
And you, welcome to Surgeons Hall.
What's this replicator?
So this is actually the type of anatomical theatre that was common across Europe. You would have people who would watch the dissection taking
Right.
place, so they would overlook it.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah. Enlightenment Edinburgh in the 18th century, we have a medical school, so you have lots of people flocking to Edinburgh to learn medicine. People are starting to think about it in relation to the body. And of course, to understand the body, you need to look inside it. And it's better to do that when the person isn't alive. You know, so you're dissecting dead bodies. So that's why you start to get this demand for anatomists, for medical men, to have dead bodies to dissect, to try and further this kind of medical knowledge.
So how did anatomists of the time actually get hold of bodies for dissection?
there's something called the Murder Act. And this comes in 1752. And what this says is that if somebody commits the crime of murder, the judge is likely to commit them to be hanged. What the judge can do at that point is say, well, you can have a further punishment. And that can be you're either gibbeted, so that means that you're hanged and then afterwards your body is put in a cage to publicly decompose.
Right.
Or you come to the anatomist table for dissection.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason for this is, in order to rise come Judgment Day, you have to be buried intact. So of course, if you're publicly decomposing or being chopped up by anatomists, this is denying the murderer the chance of getting to the pearly gates. And of course, in the meantime, you help the anatomists who want those dead bodies.
Amazing. So in Edinburgh, you've got the demand.
Yeah.
And so there's not enough murderers, I don't suppose. There's not enough bodies getting to them, is there?
There is absolutely not enough bodies. This Act is in place from 1752 to 1832. In that time, there are less than 100 people hanged for murder in all of Scotland.
Oh, wow.
Right, okay.
You know? And so there starts to be a bit of a demand for other forms of supply.
God, this makes so much sense
Yeah,
now,
that
doesn't
does. It doesn't make it okay.
No.
But
No.
it does make sense.
And so you'd need a fresh body, and how long would they last at that time?
I always say that anatomy was a winter sport because decomposition would happen slower at that point. But even so, you've only got a very limited amount of time before things are going to get a bit squishy and very, very stinky for doing that kind of dissection.
So is this where the grave robbers or body snatchers come into it?
Yeah, so they would work in gangs and they would go out at night under cover of darkness.
Oh, right.
And then they would use their spades to break the coffin. And then you would use hooks to literally pull the body out.
My problem is I'm imagining it. You know what I mean? Like, if they're laying like that in the ground, they're pulling them out from the top, I guess, or from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Selling a body wasn't a crime.
Okay.
You could get arrested for disturbing a grave, but regardless of what time of year you're doing it at, digging a body up is hard work.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and if a mob realised what you were up to, they would be outraged, and it's likely that you would have a mob descend on you. There was a whole array of different things that people would do to try and prevent body snatching happening. So you'd have moat safes put over graves, basically putting a big cage over the grave so you can't dig into it.
So it created this almost death market, really, didn't it, you know?
Yeah, I get, you know, the fact that there's less people to be able to get science, but innocent people just being killed in the face of it.
Yeah.
Kat, are there any examples nearby where we can go and have a look at the mort safes?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
You can go to Greyfriars Kirkyard and you will see a couple of moat safes still in place there.
Hand in hand through the graveyard. Very romantic. I quite like graveyards, though. There's something very soothing about them, I think.
There's only one time I want to be in a graveyard.
Well, some sight, isn't there?
Talk me through this then.
So this is a mort safe. So the word mort is death or dead in Latin. Death safe. Tells you everything. You're safe from being
So there's graves
snatched.
underneath.
Yeah, there'd be people in this. Makes you want to shiver. But the working class, they had no
wouldn't
chance.
afford that.
Your body would have been taken and given to medical science without your consent. Meat market, basically, a death meat market. But yeah, this should remain forever, just as a lesson that people will do anything, sometimes for money. It's so macabre.
Unenamoured with the squalor of grave robbing, Burke and Hare set their sights higher. They wanted fresh kills, for which they would receive top dollar from the likes of Knox and his fellow anatomists. And they would choose their victims from packed public houses and taverns around Edinburgh's city centre.
Well, here we are.
in the White Hart, one of the oldest pubs in Edinburgh.
And also somewhere, as we know, Burke and Hare could have been Grassmarket. They're still the centre of Edinburgh to this day. Fascinating that they could have come here, met their victims, lulled them in. So quite sinister, really, when you think about what they were like and how they were operating in here.
Yeah, like you say, if they would have found them possibly in this pub, what would have been their reason for choosing those people? That's what I'm going to know.
Yeah, so we're going to split up now. There's a Y in the road, as they say. I want to go and see somebody about Dr. Robert Knox. I'm intrigued about him, what role he played, how complicit he was.
Well, I want to find out about the victims. Who are the people that lost their lives and why were they chosen?
I love that about you. Always on the victim side. Why we work so well. Me, I'm interested in more.
That's practical.
Yeah. We're a double act, but not like Burke and Hare.
No.
No, more like, what would you say, more like what? George and Mildred?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We know there were 16 victims. Their identities are mostly unknown, but after more research, I found that some of their names are on record, including Joseph, Abigail Simpson, Mary Patterson, and Jamie Wilson. So I'm going to focus on those victims. I want to know who they were and how did they become victims of Burke and Hare. I've managed to track down a lady called Lisa Rosner. She's a historian. I'm told that she knows a lot about the victims, which is something that I'm really keen to get more information on. She used to live in Edinburgh, but she's in America now, so I'm going to have to Zoom with her. Hi, Lisa. Nice to meet you.
You too. It's a great honor to meet you.
I'm curious as to whether or not Burke and Hare were specific about who they were targeting.
They didn't want to be caught, so they looked for people that, in their view, would be easy to take. And so, of course, that's largely women.
And so, out of those 16 murders, how many of those were women?
12.
Okay. So, Lisa, who was Burke and Hare's first victim?
The suggestion was made by Sir Walter Scott that the first murder would have been the man we know as Joseph, because he was already sick. So that would be the next stage to murder someone who was already perhaps at death's door. And after that, they got a kind of a taste for the crime. They got a taste for the money.
Will you tell me a bit more about what happened with Mary?
Mary Patterson has long been one of the great myths of Burke and Hare, which is that she was a beautiful prostitute, murdered, and then her body was recognized in the dissection room later by one of the students who had been with her. And the fact is that she was very young. She was perhaps 16 or so. She agreed to go into the Magdalen Asylum, which was entirely voluntary. And it was a kind of a cross between a reform school and workhouse, I suppose. And she left about a week before her body ended up at Knox's anatomical dissecting rooms. She was actually accosted by Burke in a whiskey shop, who invited her to come home for breakfast. Mary Patterson's body was kept for 3 months. I think the most straightforward reason is that he held on to it because this was a very well-kept body indeed, and Knox wanted to see if anybody was going to ask any questions.
I've also heard of someone called Daft Jamie, a 19-year-old local lad with learning difficulties and a limp caused by his clubfoot. Jamie had a nickname, and even in the nickname just makes you feel like he was a sweet soul. I wouldn't have imagined he was, much of a drinker.
The nickname they had for him, Daft Jamie, would be considered very inappropriate and disrespectful now, but it seems to have been an affectionate term, and he was very well known in the neighborhood. They invited him in, and they tried to get him drunk, but he didn't drink. So they had to actually assault him and hold him down and smother him. And that's something that raised a lot of outcry later.
What can you tell me in terms of what we can learn of the representation of the people that Burke and Hare chose?
what I would like to see is that the victims be recognized for who they were. They had families that they were looking after or that they intended to go back to. They were out for a good time, which many people in Edinburgh can relate to. What I would always wish to emphasize is the tragedy of it, simply because their bodies, in some sense, had more monetary value than they themselves did as living people.
Yeah, every life is you can't put a cost on it. You can't put money on anybody's lives, no matter what your status is. Everybody's here, everybody deserves a shot at life.
A human being's life is of incalculable worth.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Thanks, Lisa. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
While Vicky's been learning about the people Burke and Hare murdered, I'm meeting up with the author Owen Dudley Edwards to find out more about the man who bought and dissected the victims' bodies in the name of science. How complicit was Dr. Robert Knox in the Burke and Hare murders?
I'm intrigued to find out something about the Burke and Hare story, but I'm particularly interested in somebody that's fascinated me in this whole story, Dr. Robert Knox. He's the man that received the bodies and performed his anatomy on them. Tell me about him.
Knox was a brilliant intellectual, born in 1791 in Edinburgh, an authority on corpses in certain ways, experience of the army, where he had ample opportunities to investigate bodies. He'd had various adventures, but began to specialize at an early stage at anatomy, and Knox became more and more qualified to study of bodies and the different races of the bodies in South Africa. He afterwards became one of the leading and most pernicious racists, theory rapists.
"200 years ago, Burke and Hare murdered 16 people here in Edinburgh and sold their victims' bodies to anatomist Dr. Robert Knox for dissection. Whilst Burke would hang for their heinous crimes, Knox got away scot-free. And I've just learned that even before he became entangled with Burke and Hare, he had a dark past in the army in South Africa, where he was a vigorous supporter of race theory.
But I didn't realise he was a huge propagandist for race theory.
That's awful. And what happened after Knox left the army?
He got back to Edinburgh, found the best jobs were being held by a professor of anatomy, Alexander Monroe III. And so Knox himself built up a school outside in Surgeon Square. That meant that they were in rivalry with one another, and Knox had to get hold of the bodies wherever he could get them.
This is a big question for me.
Do you think he turns a blind eye to the fact that somebody gets these bodies to him?
He would have known that his rivals would be having students and others getting bodies from graveyards, and he would quite likely encourage them. You know, in the old days in school teaching, you brought an apple to teacher.
Yeah.
In this case, you brought a body for teacher.
Wow, okay.
But when the murders began, a birder arrives, the second of the corpses, and Knox simply says, "Another nice fresh corpse, gentlemen."
Wow.
And from that point of view, we can say with confidence, Knox knew enough to know he mustn't know.
Okay, wow. Did he have people helping him, do you think?
Knox won the support and enthusiasm of his own students, including those who went in for grave robbery. And of course, when corpses arrived with some questions attached to them, the students knew enough from Knox. You don't ask where corpses come from. Nor would William Ferguson, his prime assistant. In the case of Daft Jamie, when that body arrived, William Ferguson took off the foot immediately. The foot was twisted, and everybody knew Daft Jamie through that twisted foot. Now, not only did Knox know enough to know that he mustn't know, William Ferguson evidently knew it also, and so would other students.
So what happened to him during the trial? Was he sort of seen as somebody that was very much part of this whole process?
Well, in the investigation of corpses, the first thing you need is a corpse. If you're investigating corpses which have been dissected by Dr. Knox and his students, well, of course, the bodies are no longer there.
That's correct, yeah, of course.
And Knox himself denied any knowledge, and of course his students denied any knowledge as to where any other bodies might have come from. Only one body survived, and investigations were made. The committees were set up, and the prominent on the committee would be Professor William Pulteney Allison. He was very much aware of the fact that Knox, like himself, and like so many others, would have got the corpses from graveyards. But if you're going to start probing who won't turn out to be guilty, at least of some crime like grave robbing, like Knox.
Right, okay.
So in other words, you have an enlightenment which is trying to pursue truth and at the same time has to cover up like all crazy. And therefore, Knox got off.
It's remarkable, isn't it?
For me, Knox is the reason why a lot of this happened. He turned a blind eye, and he and his students got away scot-free.
It's unbelievable. Knox may have got away with it, but we need to find out what happened to Burke and Hare. How were they finally caught?
And how was Hare punished? The National Library of Scotland holds tens of thousands of Scottish newspapers dating back as far as the 18th century, so they'll definitely have reports on the Burke and Hare story.
I see the price there, 7 pence. The Caledonian Mercury, all have the names of them.
It doesn't take long to find reports explaining how Burke and Hare were finally caught on the last day of October 1828.
They've had this argument, Burke and Hare. So Burke has moved up the road to some other lodgings. And he's gone out and he's met Margaret Doherty. Got her drunk, lulled her in. Got her back to the lodgings. Hare's joined him. And then they've killed her. Burked her. They've left the body under the bed to go and tell Knox they've got another body. And when they leave him, 2 other people that live in the lodging house with them, the Greys, they've said, don't look under the bed. So they've looked under the bed. James Gray is mentioned. He was present when his wife found the body, and he knew it to be that of the old woman Doherty. Mrs. B fell on her knees and implored that he would not inform of what he had seen. There we go. So this is Burke's partner saying, don't go to the police. So she knew.
Yeah.
She obviously knew. Said she would give him some shillings to put him over till Monday. So some money for the weekend. And there was never a week after that he might be worth £10. So she'd say to him, I'll give you £10 a week to keep quiet. But he said his conscience would not let him do it.
Good.
Good man, James Gray.
Yeah, good. Well, if he hadn't have done,
yes.
How many more people might have been murdered?
Well, it's it just goes to show James Gray had enough conscience to go, I don't care about the money, this is, you know, this is wrong. And he's gone to the police.
They got sloppy, didn't they?
Yeah,
You know.
massively. So this all suddenly exploded with the finding of this body. Blew it all open, really, and it became a national story.
Burke and Hare were arrested, along with their wives and Burke's landlord, John Brogan.
But with barely any evidence, police offered Hare and his wife Margaret immunity from prosecution if he testified against Burke.
Hare accepted, fessed up to all 16 murders and gave police all the detail they needed to charge William Burke and his wife, Nellie MacDougall.
William Hare was a grass. You know, it was almost worse than he was a murderer. He did it, and he got away with it by grassing. Everything's pinned on Burke, really.
Yeah.
He didn't throw anybody under the bus.
No.
He took the rap for everything.
And two of them, Hare and Knox, got away with it.
Yeah, they did.
You can see here, William Burke and Helen McDougall's trial got a lot of press coverage.
These headlines say Westport murders, an intense excitement produced by the disclosures made in the course of the late trial has in no degree subsided, so the public interest is massive. And you can see all these newspapers are running with this.
No trial in the memory of any man now living has excited so deep as that of William Burke and his female associate, which took place yesterday, as public feeling has worked up to the highest pitch of excitement. It's weird that they say excite.
Yeah.
Like people have died.
The papers then reported that Burke's wife Nellie was let off due to lack of evidence. But on Christmas Day, 1828, William Burke was found guilty of Margaret Docherty's murder and sentenced to hang.
I want to find out what happened to Burke's body after he was hanged.
And what I'm desperate to know is what happened to William Hare. On Wednesday, 28th of January, 1829, William Burke was hanged for the murder of Margaret Docherty, and it happened right here in the middle of Edinburgh. William Hare, his partner in crime, literally got away with murder. As did, many believe, the man to whom the bodies were supplied, anatomist Dr. Robert Knox. I want to know what happened to William Hare.
I also want to know, did this murder case change anything when it came to providing bodies for dissection?
Hi, Janet. Hello. Vicky, nice to meet you.
Janet Philp has written a book about the murders told from the unique perspective of Burke's skeleton, which still hangs here in the Anatomical Museum at the University of Edinburgh.
We know William Burke was hanged for the murder of Margaret Docherty in January 1829.
So what happened to Burke's body? So he was executed. His body was then transferred to the anatomy department, but so many people wanted to go and see the body, there was actually a riot at Old College. So they opened the doors the next day. 5,000 people went past his body to see it there. He was dissected by Munro, who was Knox's opposition, and Munro actually took a pen, dipped it in the blood of Burke and wrote a letter that says, "This is written in the blood of William Burke."
That is macabre. In a way, though, you've sort of brought Burke back to life with a striking image on the cover of your book.
Tell us a little bit about the recreation of the face that you did of William Burke.
It was the craze at the time to take casts of people's heads because they believed in phrenology, which is the idea that you can tell somebody's personality from the shape of their head.
Right.
We were doing work at the time with Dr. Chris Rinn, who was up in Dundee, and he scanned the death mask and he did a facial reconstruction of Burke for us.
Can we see it?
Yes.
Thanks. Skeleton. So that would be the death mask, is that
That's
right?
the death mask, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's amazing, isn't it?
Oh.
Wow. That is amazing. I didn't expect that.
That's terrifying.
It really brings it to life, doesn't it?
Reminds me of someone I know.
Does he?
I can't think who it is. You know when you see a face and go, oh, he looks like somebody.
He just looks like somebody who could walk past you in the street now.
Yeah.
Amazing. That is incredible.
And it's unsettling
Yeah.
because that could be anybody.
You'd have a pint with him, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's how Burke's story came to an end. So, what can you tell us about Hare?
So they took Hare and they put him on a coach under the pseudonym of Mr. Black and sent him down towards Dumfries. Now, unfortunately for Hare, he was recognised. So by the time they got to Dumfries, everybody knew who Hare was.
Is it a mob waiting for them?
It's a mob just waiting
Okay.
outside to rip him to bits. So they took him into the coach house and they sneaked him out a window at the back and they escorted him down to the border and they just set him free into England. Common story is that he was recognised and he was thrown into a lime pit that blinded him, and then he lived the rest of his life as a beggar on the streets of London. What's becoming the accepted story now is that he went back to Ireland into a workhouse and he is now buried in the graveyard where that workhouse used to be.
Wow.
So ultimately, Hare got his comeuppance. But what concerns me more is the 16 victims. What was done to honour them, to try and prevent anything like this happening ever again?
So the Anatomy Act was actually going through Parliament for the first time whilst this was happening.
Oh, wow.
And then shortly after Burke and Hare, when the Anatomy Bill came to Parliament for the second time, it just went straight through. So now we have the 1832 Anatomy Act, which put the grave robbers out of business, essentially. But how it did that was it supplied bodies to the anatomy departments from hospitals and poorhouses. We still do it today. People donate their bodies now. That's how medical students are taught.
Yeah, donating your body. I mean,
Yes,
it's such
it's
a wonderful thing to do, isn't it? If people are willing to do that for science. It's the choice, isn't it? It's all
Yes.
about having choice over your life and, you know, whether you become ill and your death.
By legally regulating a supply of bodies, the 1832 Anatomy Act effectively ended the era of body snatching by protecting graves and allowing students and surgeons to improve their understanding of human anatomy from cadavers supplied in a safe and consenting way. We came to Edinburgh to find out the real story of Burke and Hare and why their legacy still lives on today.
Two merciless serial killers, but Burke was the only one who faced justice while Hare got away scot-free. Not to mention their wives, Dr. Robert Knox, and all the others who must have known what Burke and Hare were up to.
It's such a tragedy that 16 people had to die here in this wonderful city.
What a city.
Yeah, what a city.
What a story.
Yeah, there's been a lot that you can compare to today's world. And yeah, it was 200 years ago.
Yeah.
And it still lies very heavy in the city, doesn't it?
Yeah. This can teach us great lessons about the modern world. You know, how people can behave in such an abhorrent way. One profession desperate for bodies, the other people desperate for money just to survive. I think it's like, there's a massive reason why Burke and Hare is such a world-famous story. Why there are tour guides packed down there now, nearly 200 years later. Why this city there, this magnificent city, produced such amazing storytellers.
Well, yeah, Irving and Owen and all these brilliant...
Robert Louis Stevenson, all these people who wrote in this city, and you can see how the echoes of this story...
was the beginning.
Yeah, was the beginnings of it.
Next time.
It was here that an infamous serial killer by the name of Christie lived. He's killed 8 people, including a baby. They hung an innocent man. His name was Timothy Evans.
You shouldn't have been hanged on the basis of these statements.
It really does give me the chills, this story.